My name is Isabella, and I am 30 years old. Growing up, it didn't take long for me to realize that in my family, love and attention were not given equally. From the moment my younger sister Doris was born, it was like the entire house shifted its orbit around her. She was the golden child, the one with the dazzling smile, the sweet giggle, the perfect little princess everyone adored. Me? I was just there. I remember my 5th birthday vividly. I had asked for a science kit, excited to explore the mysteries of the world. When the day arrived, I unwrapped my gift with trembling hands, only to find a frilly pink dress inside. My mother, Martha, clapped her hands with joy. "Now you can look just as beautiful as Doris," she said, not noticing the way my excitement crumbled into disappointment. Albert, my father, barely glanced at me before turning his full attention to Doris, who twirled in her matching dress like a little ballerina. This pattern became my reality. Whenever Doris achieved something, even something small like reciting a poem or winning a simple art contest, our parents would throw celebrations, buy her gifts, and post pictures all over the house. When I won first place in the state science fair at 12 years old, I got a half-hearted "good job, kiddo," before the conversation quickly shifted back to Doris's upcoming dance recital. At school, I buried myself in books and science projects, craving the validation I could never find at home. Every certificate, every medal, every honor I earned gathered dust in a forgotten corner of the living room, while Doris's dance trophies gleamed proudly on the main shelf. I learned early on that in my parents' eyes, love was conditional, and I didn't meet the conditions. Doris was the dream daughter they always wanted, charming, bubbly, and easy to parade around in front of neighbors. I was the awkward, bookish shadow in the background, always too quiet, too serious, too invisible. Still, I never gave up. Deep inside, a fire burned, a stubborn, unyielding belief that one day I would prove my worth. Not for their applause, not for their love, but for myself. And that day would come sooner than anyone expected. The day I left for college was the first real taste of freedom I ever had. I still remember standing in the doorway, my bags packed and my heart pounding, as Albert gave me a distracted nod and Martha told me, "Don't waste too much time on books. You'll need to settle down soon." I ignored them. College was a revelation. In classrooms and laboratories, I was no longer invisible. My passion for biochemistry and environmental sciences wasn't weird, it was respected. For the first time, my dedication opened doors rather than slammed them shut. Scholarships, internships, fellowships, I chased every opportunity and grabbed it with both hands. While other students spent weekends partying, I spent mine in research labs and libraries. My hard work paid off when I graduated top of my class, earning a position at a prestigious biotech firm before I even had my diploma in hand. The salary wasn't outrageous, but it was enough. Enough to start building the life I had always dreamed of, a life where I didn't have to shrink myself to fit someone else's expectations. I lived frugally, saving every bonus, every raise, every extra dollar. I didn't splurge on designer clothes, fancy cars, or luxurious vacations. I had one goal in mind: independence. A home of my own. At the age of 29, after years of sacrifices and discipline, I finally achieved it. I bought a beautiful 2-bedroom house for $450,000 in a quiet, charming neighborhood. It wasn't massive, but it was perfect. Modern kitchen, cozy living room, a small garden in the backyard where I imagined reading books on sunny afternoons. Every corner of that house represented a piece of me. My struggles, my achievements, my dreams. When I told my parents about my purchase, I hoped, perhaps foolishly, for a flicker of pride. But true to form, they brushed it off. Martha barely reacted, more interested in telling me how Doris had just won a local beauty contest. Albert gave me a half smile and muttered, "It's a big house for just one person, don't you think?" Their words stung, but not enough to dim my happiness. For once, I wasn't seeking their approval. I had built this life for myself, and nothing I thought could take it away from me. I was wrong. Doris's wedding had been the talk of the family for months. Martha had gone into full event planning mode, obsessing over every little detail: the flowers, the catering, the dress fittings. Albert stood proudly at her side, ready to present their perfect daughter to the world. I attended, of course. Despite everything, I still believed in showing up for family milestones, even if I often felt like a stranger in my own bloodline. The wedding venue was beautiful, an elegant hall decked out in ivory and gold. Strings of fairy lights glittered overhead, and soft music played from hidden speakers. The guests buzzed with excitement, laughing, mingling, sipping champagne. Everyone seemed wrapped up in the magic of the evening. As I stood near the refreshment table, observing the celebrations, I couldn't help but feel a bittersweet ache. There was no doubt that this day was about Doris, about her fairy tale beginning, about the perfect image Albert and Martha had always envisioned. Peter, Doris's fiancé, seemed kind enough. He had a shy smile and gentle manners, and he treated everyone respectfully. In another life, I might have even liked him as a brother-in-law. I had gifted Doris a thoughtful present, a vintage locket with an inscription about new journeys and love. It wasn't extravagant, but it was personal, a piece of my heart offered quietly. No one made a fuss over it, of course. It was just me, after all. The ceremony hadn't started yet. Guests were still arriving, chatting, enjoying appetizers. Doris flitted around the hall, glowing with happiness, her white satin dress trailing elegantly behind her. I stayed close to the fringes, smiling when required, blending into the background as I always had. But there was an unease under the surface, a tightness in the air, a strange glint in Martha's eyes whenever she glanced my way. I didn't know it yet, but the evening that was meant to be a celebration would soon twist into something else entirely. Something ugly. Something unforgettable. I was sipping a glass of sparkling water near the entrance when Martha waved me over with an overly sweet smile. Albert stood beside her, his hands clasped behind his back, looking oddly formal. "Isabella, dear, we need a quick word," Martha said, her tone laced with that familiar, sugary sharpness that always made my stomach knot. I followed them a few steps away from the main crowd, toward a quieter corner of the hall where the music faded into a distant hum. Peter was speaking with his family nearby, unaware of the tension brewing. Martha leaned in first, her voice low but urgent. "This is such a special day for Doris. Everything has been perfect so far, hasn't it?" I nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. Albert cleared his throat, exchanging a glance with Martha before speaking. "There's something your mother and I have been thinking about. Something important for the future of this new family." I straightened, the unease growing. "You have that beautiful house now," Martha said, her eyes shining not with affection, but calculation. "And you're single. You don't really need all that space." I blinked, the words landing heavily, their meaning slow to take shape. Albert stepped forward, smiling like he was offering me a great opportunity. "We think it would be the perfect wedding gift if you gave your house to Doris and Peter." For a moment, the world went silent around me. The clink of glasses, the soft laughter of guests, it all blurred into white noise. "You're serious?" I finally asked, my voice tight. "Of course," Martha said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "It's your duty as her sister. Family helps family." My hands curled into fists at my sides. I thought of the years of sacrifices, of lonely nights working overtime, of denying myself vacations, luxuries, even simple comforts, all to buy that house. My house. My achievement. I shook my head slowly, feeling the fire rise inside me. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not giving my house to anyone." Martha's smile dropped. Her eyes flashed with something darker, disappointment turning into fury. Albert's jaw clenched. Before I could take a step back, before I could even brace myself for the storm, Albert moved. And everything changed. Albert's hand moved so fast that at first, I didn't even realize what he was doing. In one furious motion, he grabbed the heavy metal cake stand from the nearby dessert table, the same elegant stand that had been holding Doris's engagement cake just moments before. Without a word, Without a shred of hesitation, he swung it at me. The metal struck the side of my head with a sickening crack. A white-hot flash of pain exploded behind my eyes. I stumbled backward, clutching my head, feeling warm blood seep between my fingers. Gasps rippled through the room. Plates clattered to the floor. Someone screamed. I could barely hear anything over the roaring in my ears, but I could see the horror on people's faces. I could see Martha rushing toward me, not with concern, but with a snarl on her lips. "You selfish, ungrateful brat," she spat, her voice sharp enough to cut. "After everything we've done for you, you dare humiliate us today of all days." I staggered, my vision blurring, struggling to stay upright. Around me, guests pulled out their phones. Some recorded, some just watched in shock. And yet, Doris stood frozen in her white gown, her mouth parted in silent disbelief. Peter, from across the room, was already moving, pushing through the crowd toward me. Before he could reach me, a voice rang out, loud, commanding. "I'm calling the police," shouted a man. Eric, I vaguely recognized him from earlier introductions. He was already dialing, speaking quickly into his phone. Martha lunged at me again, her words full of venom, but Peter stepped between us just in time, shielding me with his body. "Stay away from her," he growled, his usual gentle tone replaced with something steely and fierce. Blood dripped down the side of my face onto the pristine white floor. The fairy tale wedding was unraveling into a nightmare. Within minutes, the sound of sirens sliced through the air. Red and blue lights flashed against the glass walls of the venue. Paramedics rushed in first, their hands gentle as they led me away from the chaos, pressing gauze against my head. Behind me, I heard the click of handcuffs. "Albert Reynolds," an officer announced sternly, "you are under arrest for assault and battery." Another officer turned to Martha, who was still yelling profanities. "You too, ma'am," he said coldly, pulling her hands behind her back. The world blurred again as the paramedics guided me toward the ambulance. I wasn't sure if it was the injury or just the heartbreak, but the only thing I knew for certain was this. There was no going back. The scene outside the wedding hall was a blur of flashing lights, murmuring crowds, and hurried footsteps. As the paramedics eased me onto a stretcher, I could hear bits and pieces of conversations swirling around me. "Did you see that?" He hit her with a cake stand. "I recorded the whole thing. It's all on video." Unbelievable. At his own daughter's wedding. The paramedics worked swiftly, wrapping my head, checking my vitals, and ensuring I remained conscious. I could see Eric nearby, still speaking to an officer, showing him the footage he had captured on his phone. Another guest, a woman I barely knew, came forward hesitantly, holding up her phone. "I recorded it too," she said. "You can have my copy." Within minutes, several guests volunteered their videos, their faces tight with anger and disgust. The officers gathered the evidence methodically, taking statements, ensuring that every piece of the story was documented. Meanwhile, Martha and Albert sat on the curb, both in handcuffs, both seething. Martha continued to hurl insults under her breath while Albert stared at the ground, his jaw set in grim silence. Peter hovered nearby, refusing to leave my side. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides, the tension radiating off him like heat. "This was supposed to be a wedding," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "How could they turn it into this?" One of the officers approached me gently. "Miss Reynolds, we'll need a full statement once you're feeling better. For now, we're treating this as felony assault, given the severity of the attack and the presence of multiple eyewitnesses." I nodded weakly, the pain in my head throbbing with every beat of my heart. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I caught a glimpse of Doris standing at the entrance of the hall. Her wedding dress was still pristine, but her face was crumpled in despair. Peter's parents stood beside her, arms crossed, their faces dark with fury. I could see it, the cracks forming, the consequences beginning. The moment the ambulance doors closed behind me, sealing me away from the chaos, I realized. This was not just the end of a wedding. It was the beginning of a reckoning. As the ambulance sped away, carrying me toward the hospital, The devastation I left behind at the wedding hall continued to unfold. Inside the venue, the once joyous atmosphere had soured beyond repair. Guests murmured in clusters, some gathering their things quietly, others shaking their heads in disbelief. No one was dancing anymore. No one was celebrating. Peter's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence, stood before Doris and her remaining family, their faces hard with disappointment and outrage. "This is unforgivable," Mr. Lawrence said, his voice echoing across the silent room. "We will not tie our family to one that tolerates violence and cruelty." Mrs. Lawrence nodded sharply, her lips pressed into a thin, grim line. "We trusted you," she said, her voice trembling with contained anger. "We welcomed this engagement because we believed in Peter's love for you. But after what we witnessed today, there is no marriage."
"Not now."
"Not ever." Doris, still in her wedding gown, gasped. Tears welled in her eyes. "Please," she whispered, reaching out, but Mrs. Lawrence stepped back as if burned. "This is not just about today," Mr. Lawrence continued, unwavering. "This is about the kind of people you surround yourself with, the kind of family you come from. We will not expose our son to this poison." With that, Peter's parents turned and walked away, leaving Doris standing there, broken and humiliated. Peter stood off to the side, watching everything unfold.
He didn't argue.
He didn't defend Doris. His eyes, when they met hers, were filled not with love, but with disappointment and regret. Slowly, the guests began to trickle out, murmuring awkward condolences or avoiding Doris altogether. In a matter of minutes, the wedding that had been planned for months dissolved into ashes. Doris sank into a nearby chair, her dress pooling around her like a wilted flower. Albert and Martha, now under police custody, could do nothing to intervene, shackled by their own actions. The wedding was officially, completely, devastatingly called off. And it all traced back to one simple truth. Their cruelty had finally destroyed the perfect image they had so carefully built. The hospital room was small but quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos I had left behind. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead as nurses moved around efficiently, checking my vitals, stitching the wound on my head, and wrapping it carefully. I lay still, my body sore, my heart heavier than ever before. The doctors told me I had a concussion, but no fractures, a small miracle, they said, considering the force of the blow. I was lucky. It didn't feel like luck. As I rested, drifting in and out of shallow sleep, the door creaked open. Peter stepped inside, his face tight with worry. In his hands, he carried a small bouquet of fresh daisies, simple, genuine. "Hey," he said softly, approaching the bed. I managed a small smile. "You didn't have to come." "I wanted to," he replied firmly. "I had to." He pulled up a chair and sat beside me, his hands clasped together tightly. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of everything hung between us. "I'm so sorry for what they did to you," Peter finally said, his voice breaking slightly. "You didn't deserve any of this. None of it." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away. I didn't want to cry anymore, not for them. Peter took a deep breath. "I know a good lawyer. His name's Scott. He's a close friend of mine. If you're willing, I think you should file charges. Not just for today, but for everything they put you through your whole life." For a moment, I hesitated. Taking legal action against my own parents? The thought twisted painfully inside me. But then I remembered Martha's furious face, Albert's brutal swing of the cake stand, the years of being treated like I was never enough, and something inside me hardened. "I want to do it," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "I have to." Peter smiled faintly, proud.
"Good.
You deserve justice, Isabella. You deserve better." He squeezed my hand gently, offering silent support. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. By the end of that week, once the doctors cleared me for discharge, Peter stayed by my side as I left the hospital. Together, we drove straight to Scott's office, ready to take the first step toward reclaiming my life. Scott's office was warm and welcoming, filled with dark wooden shelves lined with legal books and framed certificates. Yet despite the comforting decor, my hands trembled slightly as I signed the paperwork. "This won't be easy," Scott warned gently, sliding the documents toward me. "But with the evidence we have, the videos, the witness statements, you have a very strong case." Peter sat beside me, his presence steady and reassuring. I glanced at the thick file on Scott's desk. Inside were sworn affidavits from wedding guests, medical reports detailing the concussion and head injury, and, most importantly, multiple clear video recordings of the assault. Every brutal moment captured in cold, undeniable reality. "I'm ready," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I want to do this." Scott nodded approvingly. "We're filing charges for assault, emotional abuse, and attempted coercion of property. Their past behavior will strengthen your case. We'll demand both criminal accountability and civil compensation." Hearing it laid out so formally made my stomach twist, but it also fueled something deep inside me. Resolve. Within days, the case moved forward. Court dates were set. Subpoenas were issued. Witnesses were prepared. When the trial began, the courtroom was packed. Friends, extended family, even reporters showed up, drawn by the scandal of a daughter pressing charges against her own parents. Albert and Martha sat stiffly at the defendant's table, their faces pale and tight with rage. I took the stand and told my story: the childhood neglect, the favoritism, the years of emotional abuse, and finally, the violent attack during Doris's wedding ceremony. Scott presented the videos to the jury. The footage showed everything. Albert grabbing the metal cake stand, the brutal strike, my stumble, and the blood that followed. Martha's screaming insults. Guests rushing to call the police. Every second was undeniable. Witnesses confirmed what the videos showed. Eric and several others testified without hesitation, describing not only the attack, but also the lifelong favoritism and cruelty they had observed over the years. Albert's lawyer tried to argue that it was a momentary lapse in judgment, that tensions had been high, that it was all a misunderstanding. But the evidence was too strong. The truth was too clear. The jury didn't deliberate for long. The courtroom fell silent as the jury returned, their expressions grim and certain. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my heart hammering inside my chest. Peter reached over, his hand lightly squeezing mine, a silent message. "Whatever happens, you are not alone." The foreperson stood, clearing his throat. "We, the jury, find the defendants, Albert Reynolds and Martha Reynolds, guilty on all counts." The words echoed through the courtroom, slicing through the thick tension like a blade. Albert's shoulders sagged. Martha gasped sharply, her hand clutching the edge of the table for support. For once, they couldn't talk their way out of the consequences. They couldn't spin lies, couldn't manipulate sympathy. Justice was happening, right here, right now. Judge Hamilton, a stern woman with sharp glasses and an even sharper voice, wasted no time in sentencing. "In light of the overwhelming evidence presented," she said, her voice cold and steady, "and considering the lasting emotional damage inflicted upon the plaintiff, I hereby sentence Albert Reynolds and Martha Reynolds each to 8 years in state prison, without the possibility of parole before serving at least 6 years. A gasp rippled through the spectators. And further, the judge continued, "They are ordered to pay full restitution for the plaintiff's medical expenses, legal fees, and emotional distress damages." It was more than I had ever dared hope for. Albert and Martha were immediately handcuffed by the bailiffs, their expressions a twisted mix of shock and fury. As they were led away, Albert turned briefly, his eyes searching mine for any trace of forgiveness. He found none. I watched them disappear through the side doors of the courtroom, swallowed by the justice system they had so arrogantly believed would never touch them. As the gavel slammed down, signaling the end of the hearing, a huge breath I hadn't realized I was holding escaped my chest. It was over. The years of neglect, the cruelty, the betrayal, they had all led to this moment. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was free. The bright afternoon sun kissed my face as I stepped out of the courthouse, the cool breeze carrying with it a sense of closure I had never known before. In one hand, I clutched the final paperwork, proof that justice had been served. In the other, I felt the warmth of possibility. Peter was waiting for me just outside the heavy wooden doors. He stood tall, dressed neatly in a navy suit, a hopeful smile tugging at his lips. Without a word, he walked up to me and gently brushed a strand of hair away from my face. "You did it," he said, pride shining in his eyes. "You stood up for yourself. You changed your life." "I couldn't have done it alone," I whispered, my throat tightening with emotion. Peter shook his head slowly. "You were always strong, Isabella. You just needed someone to believe in you like I do." He took a deep breath, the world seeming to pause around us. Guests and reporters bustled in the background, but in that moment, there was only Peter and me. From his pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box. My breath caught. "I know this isn't exactly the fairy tale timing," Peter said, his voice thick with sincerity, "but life isn't perfect. It's real, and I would rather build something real with you than chase any illusion." He opened the box to reveal a delicate, simple engagement ring, understated, beautiful, exactly the kind of thing I would have chosen myself. He dropped to one knee right there on the courthouse steps. "Isabella Reynolds," he said, "will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision as 1,000 emotions rushed through me: joy, relief, hope, love. The pain of the past didn't disappear, but it no longer controlled me. I had survived it. I had risen from it. And now I was being offered a future I never thought I could have. "Yes," I whispered, then louder, "yes." The small group around us erupted into cheers and applause. Peter slipped the ring onto my finger, and I pulled him up into a tight embrace, laughing through my tears. A few months later, we held a simple but beautiful wedding surrounded by people who truly cared for us. No grand spectacles, no toxic expectations, just love, honesty, and hope. After the wedding, Peter and I moved into my house, our house, the same $450,000 home I had fought so hard to protect. Every wall, every room, every corner of that house stood as a testament to resilience, courage, and new beginnings. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just living. I was truly, deeply, joyfully alive. Thank you so much for watching the full story. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more powerful and emotional journeys, please make sure to like the video, leave a comment to share your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories every week. Your support means the world and helps us bring even more inspiring content to you. See you in the next story.